Welcome to the Print Design Podcast, the show where we talk about all things print and packaging. We go behind the scenes with designers and talk about the print projects they designed that really rock their world. From file prep to holding the finished product in their hand and all the key decisions in between. So, let's talk ink on paper.
Chris, welcome to the Print Design Podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for making the time in your busy day to hop on here with me.
There's always time to talk to cool people, man. This is exciting. I'm pumped.
Awesome. Well, hopefully have some calls with cooler people after this, but we'll get right into it. And I'm going to start with the toughest question first. Tell us about yourself, Chris.
That is probably the toughest question. I feel like that's why they have all the games, the icebreaker games, because we hate talking about ourselves.
For sure. I don't lie. That's the toughest question.
Yeah. I am originally from Mississippi, and now I live in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mhm.
I am a big soccer fan. That's was my first love growing up. It's what I felt like I was created to do. And I just played through college and got recruited to play here at the University of Memphis. So I that's what got me here. And coming from a small town in Mississippi, living in Memphis is really fun because it's just, to me, even though it's like a little small town, it's just a gigantic city compared to what I grew up in. So I'm constantly just having fun, learning to do things. And that's soccer is like a big part of my life. Recently got married, and that is the new thanks. Yeah, she's just incredible. So that's those are my two things, like my wife Megan and soccer. And so thankfully she lets me have some me time to go play or whatever. And she's super supportive of everything I do. And I just want to give a shout to her because she's a nurse and she's been going through everything with COVID, and she's just been incredible. So I just want to thank all of the people that are doing that. But yeah, myself, I didn't go to school for design. I went to school for journalism, wanted to originally write. And then when I graduated was when the internet was kind of getting big, and they were
the
like,
internet was popping off.
Yeah, they were like, man, journalism might be dying, like print. So I said, well, let me be able to do what I love to do in a different way, which is design. So I just started teaching myself design, and that's kind of what led to all this stuff.
Awesome. So when was that? What was the timing like? Was that like a high school thing, a college thing? What was that turning point for you?
Yeah, I had some experience in high school with design and print and just that creative side. I had a senior project. One of my really good soccer teammates, one of my good friends, he and his sister passed in a car accident, and it was really traumatic. Small town, everyone knows everyone, so it was a really big thing. So I put together a fundraiser game between two local college teams to raise money for scholarship his parents were starting. And through that was I was creating flyers and doing all this media prep and a lot of print. I have a big book that's 500 pages of stuff. And that was my first dive into print design. And back then, we didn't have any programs. I was building it all on Paint and Word, right? But I mean, that was a big moment for me where I was thinking, wow, I would love to tell stories and create in this way. And then I went to college, learned more about the marketing journalism side of things, just event planning, but it never really felt like it was encompassing everything I wanted to do. And so, yeah, in college is where I was able to identify that I wanted more. And then post college, that was in 2012 when I graduated. That was when I was able to actually start doing more print design.
Cool. And print design, did that very quickly, it sounds like you identified with that and you were like, you know what? I really like this medium. I like creating these tangible objects. Does this sound right? Is that kind of how that went for you?
Yeah, for sure. In college, our senior year, we had this competition called the Student Ad Fed, like AAF, American Advertising Federation. You put together, like, you study and put together this presentation for like 6 to 9 months or something,
Mhm.
and then you go to a competition and you have to memorize a speech for like 5 people and like present all this stuff and everything. And so
Mhm.
I was mostly in charge of planning and everything. I wasn't doing any design. I didn't know anything about design. And then at the end of it, our designer for the project, she had a lookbook of all of our ideas. And I
Yep.
was like, how'd you make this? Like, all my ideas have like logos and it looks nice. She said, oh, I made it in InDesign. I was like, well, that's going to be the first thing that I learned. So I learned InDesign before I like learned Illustrator or Photoshop or anything.
Yeah.
And that was when I realized, like, oh, my ideas can be tangible things.
Mhm.
They can be more than just like written on a piece of paper or talked about in a sentence. Like, the creative ideas we have can actually become things that we can hold, see, touch, experience.
Definitely. So that's the connecting point. And I love how it's InDesign because that's basically, the print designer's best friend, when you're
Yeah.
working in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That I love InDesign, man. It's funny when I see a lot of people being like, ah, InDesign's so hard,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, I don't know. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I think why people think it's hard is they usually typically learn that either Photoshop or Illustrator first. And our good friends at Adobe don't have like exact crossover shortcuts and tools and things. So it kind of you land in it thinking it's going to be familiar. And you go, nope, this is new. This is all this is a new space. Nope, go back to Illustrator.
Yeah, right. Just go back, make all my files gigantic. I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
75, gig business card. Let's just send that in. Let's just do
yeah.
that.
Just do it. It's fine. They'll be okay.
Yeah,
Every
exactly. Printer can deal with it. Come on, guys.
Yeah, right. Always on
So,
the printer.
Chris, I always hear from designers that, nature and exercise, physical fitness is something that's, a helpful tool for their creative career. Does
Mhm.
soccer kind of do that for you and your design career?
Yeah, 100%. Soccer is my creative outlet. It's been really difficult with COVID
Mhm.
because I'm not really playing
Yeah.
like I was before. Um, but I soccer is like the most creative thing to me because when I'm playing, I'm like running on the grass. I feel the ball in my feet. I
Mhm.
just think that there's just so much creativity and opportunities to be able to pass the ball, find ways to move, run, support, like communicating to teammates, telling people what to do, helping
Mhm.
them, like saying, if I tell this person this one thing, as they receive the ball, it can change the whole way that they move,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, it's a huge creative outlet. And it gives me relief too when I'm stressed, when I'm working on deadlines, when things are
Mhm.
kind of going haywire. It's a great way for me to go back to what I know and get confident again.
Absolutely. And I find for me anyways, like my go-to outlet is mountain biking or just getting out on
Mhm.
the road and biking. And I find, when I'm really stuck on something or it feels like it's like the walls are caving in on a problem or something like that. As soon as I'm out on the bike and I'm out for an hour and I come back and there's just like a simple couple of things to do, problem solved. It just creates so much clarity and aids in decision making. That it's such a powerful thing getting outside, that fresh air, that exercise.
Yeah, that's cool. Mountain biking, man, that seems terrifying to me. So
I
going on.
know. Yeah, it's only as terrifying as you make it. Put it that way. I mean,
Oh
you can say mountain biking and be on, a walkable gravel path.
yeah.
But if you really want to go for it into the big jumps and the big drops and things like that, yeah, sure, you can push yourself there, no problem. So it's as scary as you make it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I just always imagine like on that one ledge, like, on a death-defying like bike, and you're like, oh yeah, just a normal stroll.
Yeah, yeah, there's trails like that, but again,
Oh man.
you choose to avoid them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Crystal, I might have already covered this, but I want to ask it anyways, just in case you have a separate answer on than a couple of the things that we've covered. But what's your earliest memory of printer packaging? Is there something from your childhood, something from your teens, maybe that you really remember, that like special Hot Wheels car or the action figure, or what is that?
My earliest memory of me doing print design was that game piece that I put together.
Mhm.
But the earliest memory that I have of loving print design was receiving like Eurosport magazines in the mail, which are just
Yeah.
basically catalogs of soccer gear.
Mhm.
Like I have, and no joke, at my house, like a crate as tall as probably a standing desk and as wide. That's full of Eurosport magazines. My dad has kept all. I don't know why. It was like a toy box. I threw out all my toys and I put in all the Eurosport magazines. So they're like all bleeding together and like all
Mhm.
stuck together and stuff. I was saw it over Christmas, but um, that was my earliest thing, and I was like, man, look at like how they lay out these cleats. Like it makes me want to buy it like a catalog, and like it's so easy to understand, and pictures of players and stuff. That was big for me.
Yeah. I like that, looking back at things, for me around my younger years, it was like the Sears Christmas wish book, like that
Mhm.
catalog, like that was the biggest print thing I remember. Um, and yeah, just looking at the way it was laid out, the way things were positioned, and remembering how influential that was to me as a kid, and connecting the dots now, understanding, oh, like the marketing and the design, and this is why that, and this is why that. I've always
Yeah,
found that really interesting.
yeah, it is. And being on the other side of things now, it's like it's cool to think that when a kid or a student or a parent gets something you make,
Mhm.
like if you're doing a magazine, and like they're keeping them over the years. That's just really, really cool to think about.
Man, that's the beauty of print. Like these things that are, seemingly uninteresting to certain people, other people
Mhm.
will hang on to them for decades and
Yeah.
have fond memories of them.
hmm Yeah. It's like if it has a picture of, like, I do a lot of magazine stuff for a girls' school here in Memphis, and
Mhm.
I'll get texts from people that are like, "I got our magazine this year. It looks so good," and like their daughter's in it, and they're
Yeah.
just like, they'll have that for forever,
Yeah.
and so that's really cool.
Print is something special. So, what about recently then, Chris? Have you had any recent interactions with printer packaging that really surprised you or you really enjoyed?
Yeah. I feel like I interact with different things every day that like really kind of get me jiving for print. The I think one of the ones that I really enjoy now is like, so when you're shopping, for instance, I do a lot of shopping. It's kind of stupid. I have like a little bit of addiction. I love like shopping for clothes or shopping for like random knickknacks, just fun, like finding new brands that are offering things. And the one downside that has become an upside is that like when you buy something, people just like sell your email address to like all these other companies. And but they start sending you like direct mail. And so I get so much random direct mail from companies I have no idea who they are, like just constantly. But it's so fun because they all have like totally different design aesthetics,
Mhm.
like the way they do their print mail. Like some of them, they seal the envelope so that way like you have to break it. Some of them are just straight up like books. And so I like have a collection of all these direct mail pieces that I like, of different clothing brands and different like office things. And
Mhm.
it's just really cool to have all them and reference them because it makes a difference, like if I'm pitching a new project or like we have an idea or we want to communicate in a really cool way with using a direct mail piece, like I
Yeah.
have all these reference things. So um that's been the one recently that's like been a weird positive.
You know what I find? So, the first I want to ask you the question, and be honest with me here, Chris. Do you
Mhm.
ever smell the direct mail?
I actually do. I actually do smell it.
Good, good.
Yeah, I do. It's really weird. No one's ever asked me that. I don't think Megan's ever seen me do it in my life, but I do. I do smell it. Just because the paper stocks are so different,
Yep.
and like I don't really actually I don't smell them if they're plastic. Like if they're gloss, I don't smell them. Like
Yeah, no, it
they're,
doesn't leave much.
they're,
So the
they're
uncoated ones.
yeah, yeah. But if it's matte, yeah, pretty much. If I pick it up and I'm like, ooh, then I smell it every time. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
You got the sight, then you got the tange, the touch.
Hmm.
You get the smell in there. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
my wife has seen me smell mail. I'm ashamed of that.
Well, hey, look, if someone's got to see you do it, it might as well be your wife or
Yeah, exactly.
or
At least I
your
have an
partner.
opportunity to explain
Yeah,
it.
you're locked in, so
That's true. You sign the contract. This is what comes along with it.
Yeah, you find out those things, later, but you still signed on.
Yeah, exactly. It's still part of the contract. So, Chris, what do you think makes print so special to designers? Because out of the hundreds of designers I've interviewed through a couple of podcasts and my day job, they've all got little collections of printed things at their desk or at home, whether that's packaging or magazines or cool direct mail or something unique. And whether they design for print or not, they're always holding these things and hoarding these things. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it's just a nod back to like humble beginnings.
Mhm.
We're just such in a big digital age right now
Yeah.
where even we're designing for just the tiniest little circle avatar for social media. Like, can your logo fit in this little circle? Like at a 1 pixel scale. And it's cool to have something that we could just hold
Hmm.
and be able to read easily, be able to interact with, and slow down. I think that's the thing. Like, you can't digest a print piece in its entirety in 10 seconds or a
No.
minute.
Hmm.
And that is one really nice thing about it is like it forces you to slow down. And we live in such a fast-paced life where everyone wants everything now, our deadlines in a week. Um, it just like I keep mine around because I know when I look at something, it's gonna take me time, and
Hmm.
I enjoy that a lot. And so I think that's one aspect. Another aspect is it's just really cool to see something you make come into reality. It's a lot different. Like if you launch a brand and the brand is digital only and it's a website and like it's a social media, but really where you get a kick out of it is like if they put your logo on a T-shirt or
Yep.
if they make it into a sign on a building, then you're like, whoa, that's like,
Then it's real.
and it's real because we
Yeah.
can, everybody's got a dribble, everyone's got all this stuff. You can just make stuff and put it on the internet and like
Yep.
whatever. But when someone is invested in your design, your creative work to the point where they're willing to bring it from this pixel point thing that you've made on a computer
Mhm.
to something that is going to actually be real, made of atoms, you know, like
Yes.
that is like a whole nother kind of shebang. So
Yeah, it goes from like pixel to object, like it just becomes a thing in itself.
yeah.
And right now, it's funny you had mentioned direct mail earlier because right now, I think in a combination with this overwhelm of digital, which was amplified by 2020, in this world of everything so much digital, that digital detox is becoming more and more exciting for a lot of people. A lot of people are pursuing that more and more. So
Hmm.
right now, standing out in the mailbox through direct mail and through a campaign is like the opportunities are endless right now. And if
Yeah.
you do something just a little bit outside of the ordinary, a little bit better than the McDonald's or the Burger King flyers that everybody's receiving with coupons and misregistration and smudged ink and like all of that stuff, if you do something better than that to stand out in the mailbox, you are getting more brand customer attention time than you would in a week on your Instagram with that consumer.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it on the head because it's almost like an intentionality thing.
Hmm.
When if let's say you get a people want to invite you to a party and you get a text message that's with 10 other people, 20 other people in a group say, "Hey, y'all want to come to my party?" It's like, I feel like that's cool, but do you really want me there? Like you got all
Hmm.
these other people, like I don't feel as special. But
Hmm.
when you decide to send me an individual text with my name and say, "Hey, I want you to come to my party," it's like,
Hmm.
whoa, all right, you've intentionally invited me. I feel very special. I think it's the same way with like Instagram and comparing to direct mail. Now, granted, when you do direct mail, like it goes to a lot of people,
Hmm.
but in terms of the interaction, like on Instagram, you're scrolling, you're just like, another ad. Like, like we all know that it's all an algorithm to just, I just feel like a number that
Yep.
has identifiers that tell this thing to send it to me. But instead, if someone sends me a piece of mail, it's like, my first interaction or my first thought probably should be like, how the heck do they know to send this to me? But my first gut reaction is really like, whoa, they decided to spend money, like tangible money on a piece of
Yep.
paper, a book,
Yep.
to send it to me, you know.
Yep. Like digital's infinite. Whereas
Hmm.
print, even if you get one along with 100,000 other people, one, you don't necessarily know that. And two, like you have one of those. Whereas
Yeah.
digital, anybody in the world can find that.
Yeah.
But this printed postcard that, I always use this example, this printed postcard from the deli around the corner having a sale on bacon, and the direct mail smells like bacon. Boom, you just hit it out of the park. And it's that person who gets the mail and goes, "Oh my God, this smells like bacon, and it's advertising bacon. This is amazing." How many people are they going to show that to? Because that blew their minds.
Yeah. And then how many people are they going to tell too?
Yeah.
They could easily tell other people about it.
Hmm.
I'm a big Allbirds fan.
Yeah.
I have so many pairs of them. And somebody showed me like a flyer that they received in the mail for Allbirds. And I had gotten tons of Instagram ads for Allbirds, but
Hmm.
I never clicked on it. But when someone had showed me like this flyer they had received just about Allbirds, I bought a pair.
Yep.
And I now love Allbirds, you know, and I tell everybody about them. So, like, I think there is definitely just something unique about the tangibleness of a print piece.
Yeah, and print also creates trust
Hmm.
more now so than ever. Because how many ads do you flip by through Instagram? How many, wish.com ads do you come across? And, everybody questions the quality of those kind of products. Like it because there's so much there, you question the quality of these things. But a brand that's willing to connect with you there and at your door by spending money to send you something, a little book, a little pamphlet, a little postcard, whatever that is. Okay, now I trust these guys. These guys are legit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all in the age of like what is real or fake, right? In
Yep.
terms of
Yep.
a website, a product. Are they trying to steal my money? Are they trying to steal something from me?
Hmm.
And so taking the extra leap and confirming with the customer, hey, we're real. We just sent you this.
Yep.
We would like you to try our product. Like, we believe it's really good. And then that's like, oh, this is a real company. Like,
Yep.
no fake company is spending money in direct mail. Like, this, like,
No.
why on earth would they go through that? Like, so
Yeah.
I think that is a really cool thing about it. And also, it's like from a price point perspective, I actually prefer to spend more money on a product than to try to get the cheapest deal because I know it's better.
Yep.
So, like, if someone sends me a print piece and it has pricing in it, I'm like, oh, they're not in the business of like a random sale. They're in the business of this is the price for our product. If you want it, come get it. And I
Yep.
appreciate that
Yep.
because that means that like we're not trying to just we're not desperate, you know.
Yep.
We're very authentic. So yeah.
I love how you worded that for sure. Okay, Chris, we're gonna go back in history here. Gonna go back in time again.
Ooh.
I want to hear about the very first print project that you were ever a part of. Like, give me a little bit more detail. I think we've touched on it already, but I wanna hear a little bit more of this story. That first print project that you ever produced.
Oh man, I feel like I should give you like a little bit of a bit of both. The first one that I ever produced and the first one that I was proud to produce, I think would be good. Um, the first one I ever produced, I just graduated college
Mhm.
and I I just decided like I want to do design, right?
Yeah.
I just made that transition in my mind. I got an internship for a nonprofit that was focused in basketball and sports and urban youth development. They had terrible flyers, terrible everything, but the program was just fantastic.
Mhm.
But the flyer was just all over the place. So even me in a nod, like not knowing anything about design, like knew it was a bad flyer. It was just all the clip art and word that you could find. Like if you just went down the list, all of them were on the flyer. So
Nice.
um, I got a chance to clean all those up. So I just cleaned them all up. Added, I remember like downloading fonts that had like it was for a winter basketball camp. So I downloaded a font that had like snow on it and like made that the title and like
Nice.
had like all the because I mean it was not just a flyer, but it was also a flyer and a sign up form. So
Yep.
I had to have a flyer at the top, sign up form at the bottom with all these lines and like check boxes and stuff. Like it was crazy. So I look back at that now and it's a terrible flyer. It's like so bad. But in comparison to what they had, it was really good.
Yeah.
So um, and it was intentional. And so now, like I run my company saying with the tagline, we have purpose driven design. Like that's what we create. And I think from that it stemmed like anything that I'm going to do is going to have a purpose and a reason behind it, even if it might look a little weird. It's going to have a reason. So I think that was the first one, and then that led to like creating a T-shirt for the basketball fundraiser, which was really fun using like not even knowing what the pen tool was, like all these kind of things. And so I like warped one of our city skylines like down and had a big basketball on it. And like I didn't know how to duplicate a square. So I was like drawing a square with like the pencil tool and Illustrator and like had the lights for the buildings. Oh, it was so bad. But everyone loved it. Everyone loved it. They all loved it. Um, that was the first one. And then the first one I'm proud of was after that job, I went to work for a company called Thomas and Betts.
Mhm.
And at this point, I had learned more about design and like actually was a you know competent designer at the time. And then they needed a fly like a poster to celebrate 100 years in business, and they
Nice.
had about like you know 50 different um, things in history that they wanted to focus on in the poster and say, hey, here's like, 40 to 50 things that are in our history. We have three sentences for each one. We need the date and the sentence all to be on this poster that looks good. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how am I going to make a poster with items of history that are like all these different points that someone's going to want to put on their wall? Like, why would anyone do that?
Yeah.
Um, but what I did was I just typed out 100 in like Babus New or something and like really tall X height. And I think I even extended it more. And then I cut out the middle of the 100. So you could just see the top and bottom of the O's and the one. And
Mhm.
then I put the points in history like within the shapes, right? So it's still read as 100, and we had like 100 with all the different points in history, and then had a really simple tagline and like really simple copy underneath with a logo,
Mhm.
very clean, and everyone loved it. And like the CEO, I remember like put it on his wall, and that was like a really big deal. And so, yeah, that's the first one I was like proud, like super proud of.
That's awesome, man. What a cool experience. The 100th anniversary for a company, like that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I don't know why they gave it to me. I was an intern, but they were
It
like,
was
"Do our
like
poster,
yeah, let's
intern."
see what this guy's got.
Yeah, very weird.
That's awesome, man. So was it just like a one-off for just inside the company, or was this something that they gave out to their customers, or like what was this?
Yeah, it was more like an internal thing. A lot of all the employees like got a chance to pick one up if they wanted at the like celebration party, and
Mhm.
then But yeah, it was mostly like for internal and then on the website. So like
Yeah.
on the website, they had like, celebrating 100 years and check out our poster. And they just, posted the poster as a downloadable thing.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
What a cool experience.
Hmm.
So, just before we do a deep dive here, Chris, into a project or two that you've been a part of that we're really proud of, first want to get into a story about a project that you've been a part of that did not go well, went sideways, fell flat. Um, Tell me about that project and your experience with it.
Yeah, the biggest one was kind of a couple years ago. We were working on this campaign for Box Lot, which is a shipping contain like it's a hub in our area in our neighborhood that originally was like shipping containers for, sorry, it was trying to think of the best way to explain it so you can understand it.
Mhm.
But like small shops, like if you have a clothing boutique store or whatever,
Yeah.
like you basically get to have your storefront in a shipping container.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the test concept. So instead of like locking in to a lease and maybe your business isn't working,
Yeah.
you're like stuck for like a year lease or more in like this, brick and mortar, you can do this small pop up.
Yeah. Like
And
pop-up container stores. That's cool.
yeah, and so it didn't really work when they first started. And so they brought me in to kind of revamp it. And so we rebranded it and like it's looking great. Like we're super hyped about it. We redid the space, added a bunch of shading, really cool stuff. And we're in charge of like the launch for it.
Mhm.
So in launching it, I wanted to get people excited to come that didn't know that it was happening.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, let's look at all the influencers in our community. And instead of just like sending them an email, like let's be really tangible. Like let's create a gift box and we're going to call the grand opening party Unbox. So it's like everyone gets to unbox Box Lot.
Yeah.
Um, and so what we did, well, the theme was like we had this custom box created with like different pieces of things that they could experience at the party, like very music heavy. So like there's a music box you can put your phone in and like plays loud, makes it louder like a speaker. There's a key, so that way like you come to the event, you can like open a specific box and get like a gift card or whatever, all
Yeah.
types of stuff like that. And we were going to deliver it to our people we wanted to invite to the VIP opening. And then we were going to say, hey, take a video of you opening this box and like upload it to your social media to create hype and tag us. So they were going to open the box, take a video, and it's like this unboxing video that's really popular in like YouTube, right? For cool products.
Yeah.
So we make the super cool box, but the manufacturer is just slacking. I mean, just really, really slacking to the point where, because we couldn't use, like, someone local didn't have enough lead time for us to do it because my client, like, it took a while to get the sign off on it because it was such a, totally different idea. And so when we finally got the sign off, we could only use like an external production company to do it.
Yeah.
And they said, all right, this will take like, certain amount of time, whatever, and we'll get it shipped overnight, and it'll be fine. And you will have like a week before the event. I'm like, oh, great, totally fine. And it just kept getting delayed. They were having issues with something, and I'm like calling them every day, like, hey, what's going on? Why is the box not in production? Oh, well, we don't know, all this stuff. Eventually, like, I'm just at the point of going crazy because, this has been a 9-month thing in the process to plan. And, the boxes don't arrive. Like, they just don't get there until the day of the event.
Ugh.
And so, what we ended up doing was we went to like Michael's and just got random cardboard boxes, like, the gift boxes or jewelry boxes, and we put all the gifts in there. We put like a balloon on it. We wrote their name in like a cool cursive font and delivered it to them, and it worked for the most part. But it wasn't as it didn't go over very. It wasn't as great as it could have been.
No, not as impactful as, what you had built and planned.
Yeah, every piece of the box, like as you open it, had like a little message, a funny saying. So like when you got all the stuff out at the end on the bottom of the box, it said, please stop looking for gifts. We've given you enough already. And like, you know, like things like that, just like that would have been really fun for them to interact with. Because it was part of the brand.
Yeah.
And instead it was just a box with a balloon. So it was a bit sad and the client was disappointed, but the overall project was an extreme success. So thankfully that worked out nicely.
Yeah, and hopefully they cut you a deal on the production side because they kind of left you hanging there.
Yeah, well, I might have got a little mean. So, we we got a good deal. We got a deal, and they were able to use the boxes later on for another launch,
Mhm.
for an event. But it was a good learning. It was a good lesson to learn because I now like will push a client like, hey, if we want to do this, we need a plenty of lead time. We're gonna do it locally instead of outsourcing, or at least in the vicinity of our city.
Yeah.
So that way, like if something goes wrong, like we'll be
It's not a
okay.
flight away, it's a drive away to figure it out.
Yeah, and I made a rookie mistake of having the date on the box for the event, so that once the date had passed, the boxes themselves had become dated. So when they use them in the future, we had to cover it up with like a sticker, like a box lot sticker or something. So it was an
Yeah.
additional cost later. So um, it was a really good learning experience.
Mhm. Yep. That's a that's a good one. That's a good one, Chris.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, let's transition into this deep dive here because you have sort of teased me a little bit with some of the pictures of what we're going to get into and talk about, and I'm excited to get into this. So I want to get into the deep dive on this project. I want to talk about, a little bit about the customer, the budget, how these were produced, if you were a part of the quoting process, materials, and how you made those decisions. So what you got, Chris?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about BR Distilling Co. and their launch product line of Blue Note Bourbon, Blue Note Juke Joint, and Riverset Rye. It's some really fantastic bourbon whiskey.
Mhm.
Um, their product is just phenomenal. It's distilled locally here in Memphis, Tennessee, and really want to talk about the creation of the brands and everything because this was when they brought us in, they already had a brand and a bottle for
Mhm.
each product. But they wanted to elevate it even. They wanted to elevate it. Like it just seemed less unique. It wasn't popping on the shelf.
Mhm.
Um, they weren't getting the right investment that they wanted
Yeah.
from people down the line. They wanted it to feel like a premium product while being cost efficient. So we have three SKUs that we did: Riverset Rye, Blue Note Bourbon, the premium small batch, and Blue Note Bourbon Juke Joint. And when we first started, they only had the premium small batch and Riverset. And so we needed to create a new brand for both of them. The Both of the products when we first started were priced around $52, $53.
Mhm.
They were premium products, but no one was really buying the Riverset. People just weren't as into it. They might have had a little bit of a flavor profile that they needed to change. But they knew they had a good product. And feel free to interject with anything. I don't know where you want me to start or end or whatever, but
Yeah, no, I love the story you're telling about the customer and sort of what their requests of you were basically.
yeah.
And so when you were looking at the packaging that they had at that point, like that was your first thing to tackle was, well, you want X amount of dollars per bottle, you're not getting that.
Mhm.
We got to do something with this label. Like, was that sort of your first approach because it just didn't feel or seem premium?
Yeah, the biggest one was Blue Note, and so it had a very Western theme, like it was using typeface that you would see in an old Western. It was very
Yeah.
cowboy-esque, which is not what it was. It was about the blues in Memphis. And so it didn't speak to music, it spoke to like being in the country.
Yeah.
And Riverset had this picture of a riverboat. It was supposed to be thematically tuned to the Mississippi River riverboats that would travel and take bourbon different places. And Memphis is along the riverbanks of the Mississippi River, so it was big that way. But it didn't seem as premium, and the red was very dull. So
Mhm.
the theme or the color for Riverset is red, and Blue Note was this dark navy, and it just wasn't screaming what they wanted it to do. So they knew they had a bottle shape that they wanted, and they knew that they wanted to rebrand.
Mhm.
But in the meantime of going through that process, we needed to do something with Blue Note to make it come together a little bit better.
Yeah.
So what we did was we started down the path of figuring out, and all the bottles, like every whiskey packaging has to have those details of, the milliliter, the alcohol by volume, the proof.
Yep.
And so a lot of times people make them small because they want the design to be the focus. But how do you get that good contrast? Like if you have an age year that's really good, you want people to know that. And so
Yep.
Blue Note was aged 9 years, which is really, really good. And so we said, all right, if we think about the blues, if I'm going to like an old blues haven, like, and I'm talking to a musician, I say, hey, give me your phone number. I want to talk to you. He just like rip a piece of paper and pass it to me, you
Yeah.
know? So I'm like, well, let's use that in our brand across all of our SKUs. So at the bottom of the bottles, we created like a tear strip that's a custom dye. So like it's got a nice beige color to it. And
Yeah.
so that creates a contrast between the main color of the brand, and then every product SKU has that tear strip at the bottom. And
Mhm.
then on that tear strip, we have like the product details, like age 9 years, unfiltered, crafted in Memphis, and then what it is, like street bourbon whiskey, straight rye whiskey, small batch rye. So now you have that contrast on the packaging. So when someone's, walking down the aisle, they'll get this hit of color with product details instantly. And they don't even have to do any work. It's just already there for their eye to discover.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was really cool. We implemented that on the old brand before, as we were creating the new brand identities. So that was the first thing we had to tackle. Yeah,
And I'm just going to sort of share the screen here so that we can have a look at this while we're chatting.
yeah.
Yeah. So we can definitely see the tear strip along the bottom there.
hmm Yeah, so the tear strip there is really cool because it took a while to figure out exactly where we wanted to tear it and how closely we could get those movements for the die.
Yep.
The border around each product is also kind of a evolution of the previous Blue Note brand. They had, like I said, they had a Western theme, so they had like a border around it, but it was too cowboy-esque. So we
Yeah.
kept the border, but changed the squares to be diamonds, just so it's kind of like this diamond in the rough kind of thing. And we knew we wanted to have some type of foil. So this riverboat, and then the other products, so you can see close up there about the border. We wanted to make sure that the foil would pop off of each of the primary colors for the label.
Yep.
Um,
Definitely.
this the Blue Note Premium Small Batch was what we're looking at now. That is the original bottle for shape for both of the products, and
Yep.
then the Riverset bottle that's now is the new bottle shape. So we needed to maintain this premium look. So when someone sees this, they say, "Oh, I would be willing to pay $50 for that bottle."
Yep.
Where it's very clean, very classy, um, but is thematically and holistically within brand.
Yep.
So we added a music element. We put a guitar in the U for Blue Note,
Yep.
and now have that music element immediately hit. We had to go through several Pantones to get the right blue
hmm
because you needed enough contrast, but we didn't want to bleed back into navy. Um, so we had to find the right Pantone, which took a long time, and find the right printer that we could match it to the tear strip and
Yep.
across all SKUs.
hmm
But now we have like a nice light blue foil that pops off of it, and it really creates like a good interaction with someone when they go and pick up the bottle and turn it. They get the sense of like the blues.
Definitely. And I love how you've incorporated that sort of lower tear strip and you've really emphasized like the years um, down in that bottom piece of the label. And also because this is like the premium small batch product, you also were conscious of letting the consumer like really see the contents within the bottle and not overpowering the bottle with a label, but just complementing the inside product with the label.
Yeah, so because this, like you said, is such a premium product, we don't need to, the product can do the work for us, you
Yes.
know? Like we just need people. That was one of the biggest compliments that everyone was getting about the labels was we love that it's naked. We love the bottle being naked.
Yeah.
So even the fact that like if you look at the back of the bottle, like there's not a story on it, right? It's just the necessary information, barcode,
Yep.
like at the bottom, and like the name of it, where it's distilled, all that kind of stuff, right? Like we didn't have it, we didn't put any story, and so we have a neck hanger that we put on it now, so it still doesn't hide the product. It's just like a little square that
Yep.
has the story of the product on it. So that way, when people can interact with it, like, wow, look at this, like, look at this. This is just whiskey. This is just bourbon that's really, really good and smooth.
Yeah.
And that was the main focus of that bottle piece.
That's awesome. So do you have a contrast of what they were paying for packaging, labels for their products before and what they're doing after and how that changed the transformation or how that transformed the sales of the product?
Yeah, I don't have the specifics on like before and after in terms of pricing. I don't know if they would want me to share the
Yep.
specific of what they're paying, but I
Yep.
can tell you that we did increase um, in terms of how much we pay per label, by a few cents,
Yep.
So because we added foils. So one of the ways to cut down the biggest cost that we have really for the client is labor. Everything's hand labeled, everything's hand put on. So the
Yep.
biggest thing was labor. We introduced the tax strip at the top of the bottle to where um, each bottle could have an identifier along with the primary distillery, which is that BRDC bug there at the top. And so that is the additional cost of labor. Like,
Yep.
we're labeling 3 labels plus a tax strip.
Yep.
And so we wanted to be very cautious of how we can make it as quickly as we can, like to where the people that are labeling it could do it fast, instead of slowing it down. So making everything around the same size, making the foils, like every die is the same. So like
Yep.
whether it's the river set or the juke joint, and then our future upcoming products, like every die is the same. They get used to it,
Yep.
and we're still developing the tax strip to even make it a little bit more friendly for that. But yeah, in
Yep.
terms of sales and impact, it it increased sales tremendously. Basically, for Riverset, that launched before a Blue Note rebrand, and Riverset, what they did was they decreased the price and the product a little bit. It was a 52 bottle, and now it's a 29.99.
Yep.
So now you have this really premium label on a more accessible product. And the
Yeah.
label and brand itself just went haywire. Like everyone loved it. Everyone was buying it constantly, and it was almost gaining more popularity than Blue Note, which wasn't the intention. And ultimately down the line, like that's not the intention. So we want this to be a family and not like Riverset Overshoot because we have a lot more products coming for Blue Note.
Uh-huh.
So it was a good surprise when Riverset was so well received because that was something that they weren't anticipating, and because of the packaging and the branding efforts and the product itself is just fantastic. So you combine that and it allows people to really love it.
Definitely. So the one I have up on the screen here is the river set, and I'm actually just going to pull up a better picture of the foil and the close up of that because I want to ask about that in the file setup.
Mhm.
Um, tell me a little bit about the file setup to really execute on this foil.
Yeah, so I have to give a huge shout out to Patrick Weber, my business partner.
Yeah.
You can find him at Alpha Tone Design Co. He is the guy behind the illustration. I art direct, but he, is the best illustrator I've ever met.
Yeah.
He Working with him is great because he can draw in all different types of platforms. So he'll, work in Procreate or, whatever he needs to do. But then we create a TIFF file, um, and then basically getting that TIFF, we can change the color. So when we first started on Riverset and all this stuff, originally the label was going to be more off-white, like a torn paper, the whole thing.
Yep.
So we originally drew the riverboat to just be one color. So it wasn't going to have foil, right? It was just going to be a print. It was kind of going to be in the background. But then we adjusted and said, well, let's make it a red and like let's make the boat pop off of that. And so the difficult thing was we had already drawn it for one color. So as you're probably familiar, like if you just put that one color on like a dark background, it looks like a ghost. It looks just blown out.
Yeah.
So we had to change the way that the boat rendered to where we could have an outline and also have the gold and have enough contrast to see the details.
Yeah.
So we set up the TIFF file, we got the coloring right, and then working with the production company, the printer, we had to really get detailed and be able to layer it so where you can't see this on this picture because it's really, really well done, but the boat, the black and the gold is actually another layer on top of the red.
Got it. So it's overprinting.
Yeah. So we have that foil as well as the boat overprinted on the red.
Yeah.
But you can't tell because it's, in there so well. The single barrel version of this, you can kind of see a little bit because the blacks don't exactly match up right,
Yeah.
in terms of tonage. So like you can tell if you really wanted to like look at it, but it doesn't like come across to the, naked eye that often unless you're really looking. But yeah, being able to get the detail on the foil was really great because obviously it makes a huge difference. Like every nook and cranny of that wood
Yep.
is offset to the gold. Even the paddle boat, like the shading of it is, just fantastic. And the little things even on the flag, like you've got little bitty gold hints on the flag, like
Yeah, man.
those are all foiled. So it's it's incredible.
What a detailed foil die.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a lot of effort to get that.
So just curious on the decision to overprint the red versus like, reversing it out of the red. And was it just a registration decision?
Yeah, that was mostly on like our printer,
Yeah.
We didn't really make that decision. It's mostly their thing. So I know that they decided like, okay, we could press this into the label and it'll come out looking like you don't really see it.
Yeah.
And we can keep that detail.
Yeah.
And so that was really why we did it. Because even on the waves, like you can see that there's, suds on the waves that are getting foiled.
Yeah.
And even on like the logo, we have the foil for the trademark and the shadow. And that is like even to the tiniest, sliver. So we really just needed to get that foil just right.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so cool. Now, what about the proofing and press checks for this? Because it sounds like you used a local vendor to produce these.
I don't think that they're local. They have access in local, but I think they're like nationwide, but they have
Okay.
a hub here. So we can talk to them, but they kind of travel all around. And so, yeah, in terms of getting, well, repeat it one more time for me. Repeat the question one more time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just looking into how the proofing went with this. Did you
Oh,
attend a press check where it was being printed? Did you went through, Pantone chips and filter color or foil color chips? Like, what was that proofing like?
yeah. So we got, the standard media kit with all the different dyes and example prints. So we were trying to decide if we wanted to do emboss
Mhm.
or foil, and emboss, and we decided just to do foil.
Yeah.
But going through that, we didn't, because we were only gonna order like a test sample first, we couldn't really get like, 10 bottles.
Yeah.
We had to order it. So luckily we went and did our homework a lot on the front end. And so we tested every foil that was gold with the red, and we tested like the contrast of the Pantones. We had several different reds printed. There's also a local competitor that uses a red, so we had to make sure that it was different enough.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there was definitely a lot of back and forth with what's going to work and pop the best for the gold. When we did our first run, we everyone was super well received, but eventually we knew that we would introduce gold for Blue Note as well. So
Mhm.
we decided to make a slight transition on the gold foil to a little bit lighter gold rather than a deeper gold. So on the next run of bottles, we changed the gold a little bit so that way the gold would match up much nicer with the Blue Note gold.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
Nice.
So yeah, that was kind of the proofing process of that. Was we didn't get a chance to see it on the bottle before ordering it. We actually printed the label, the first run on a very small run of bottles, that went to market or went to some stores for testing. That the tack strip was a little bit thicker, and we actually didn't have any kind of curvature warp for the label. It was actually just straight, you know. And we wanted to test if the application would be fine with that or if we needed to warp it. And we found out that, like, because the bottle shape was just ever so tapered, that like when we were applying, some bottles would look great, some bottles would not. So we ended up going back and just arcing that label a bit. So what we'll do is we'll design the label straight, flat,
Yeah.
and then go in and warp it to adhere to that taper. Just because we thought we could get away with it, but we couldn't. We learned that it wasn't. We were like, oh, it should be fine. It's a pretty close, but then the printer, like, we tried it and we got it right.
Yeah, no, I totally get that because it's really hard to know, um, even how much without doing a test run straight. And that's where whenever I'm working with a customer, whether it's a beer label or a shrink sleeve or, a spirit label, like if you're doing some things that are a little bit unique and you don't have an exact sample reference on what you're trying to do, I always recommend doing a little bit of a test run. You know,
Yeah,
keep it as low cost as you can, but don't shy away from doing a test run because, you know, yeah, spending some extra bucks on a short run of 50 or 100 labels to just to really make sure you're dialed with the design before printing 2000, like that's a worthwhile investment.
every time, every time it's whatever way you have to do a test, you kind of have to test it.
Yeah.
You just have to see it before you
Yep.
decide to go all in.
100%. So on the design and on the production side of this, from showing the customer your nearly ready draft to holding the finished labels in your hand, what was that time frame like?
Yeah, so we haven't done too much with the juke joint label. I don't know if you got a chance to see that one as well. It's not necessarily on my full website yet, but
No, I did. So let me just not share the screen and then I'll bring it back in a sec here. But yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. What were you saying?
So yeah, from draft to in hand, it was probably about a 9 to 10 month process.
Yeah.
Um, it was long. Riverset was happening around the same time, but it launched earlier just because we still had some branding to figure out with Blue Note. I mean, we went through, tons and tons, like I think 30 rounds of branding and label design before we landed somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, normally I don't like to do 30, but hey, look, we got to get it right. So,
Yes,
um,
exactly.
so yeah, we went through a lot of iterations, and the biggest holdup in terms of design was juke joint
Yeah.
because we
Mhm.
had this idea to have a custom like label
Yeah.
that incorporated music. We wanted it to be music, music, music.
Nice.
And so we had a riff created from a local musician specifically for the brand. And we wanted to implement that on the bottle. We just didn't know exactly how we were going to do it,
Yeah.
because it was only, 3-line riff and not very long, 20 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But we wanted it to shine. We wanted that detail to come through.
Yeah.
So we went through so many iterations of a staff straight, a staff floating. Like, I mean, it was crazy. And we thought we had made it and every time almost, but it just never felt like just right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the biggest holdup was getting this right. And eventually we landed at this design where we would put the guitar contrast with Blue Note, the brand itself, and kind of just created more movement with it,
Mhm.
extended out, and just basically said, all right, well, we don't need to worry about showing the full thing because not everybody can read sheet music, but the people that can, like, they'll be able to see it. And as long as every portion of the riff is visible at some point, that's the most important thing. So we doubled the riff so that way it would fill more of the bottle, and
Yeah.
instead of trying to force it, we just let it be there. And it really, really, really came together. So this has been one of the most fun projects to ever be a part of because it's so unique.
Okay, so just so I understand and I'm hearing this right, the sheet music notes in the background there, that is a legitimate riff that was written by a local artist for this bottle, for this product.
Yep, you could play that. Yeah, you could play that.
Holy cow.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
it's
let me
really
just grab my guitar real quick. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
right.
I'm just kidding. I'm not that
Yeah.
good.
Oh man, that would be killer, man. But
Oh,
you
that'd be
could.
so awesome. Yeah, I
You
could.
could. You could. That's the cool thing. It's a legit song. And yeah, we're planning to hopefully do some more marketing pieces along with the riff, but it's been really cool. That was the biggest thing that took the longest because we had a riverboat to base off of the original one to make the new brand. So we kind of knocked that out pretty quick. Like,
Yeah.
we once we had the layout of the label, it was just a matter of like getting the grid right at the bottom for highlighting the product. But so that's why it launched early because we got it right. But
Yeah.
the Blue Note brand, just the word mark
Yeah.
took a long time. And one thing we're still battling through now is like as the bottle is straight on, like the foil doesn't have still enough contrast to pop off without certain light hitting it.
Mhm.
So we're working through more iterations to achieve the overall glow rather than
Yeah.
like an angled glow of the music riff and other foil with the blue.
So, and maybe this is already in your plans, but telling that story with the riff even deeper, whether through, a tiny booklet as a neck hanger or something, really emphasizing that and getting that story of, this is the riff for this product. You can play this. This is the artist that created it. Or even a spot on their website that people can go watch this little YouTube video of the artist like slaying the riff. Like
Hmm.
that's so cool. And that's also would be a beautiful example of how print and tangible things can work well in complement with that online world, which is where this beautiful merger is happening, right? They're complementing each other so well and can be done so right.
Yeah, that's a great idea, man. We're trying to develop new concepts to bring the riff to the forefront or more um, you know, beauty for it. Right now I think we're all focused on exposure for the brand and
For
just,
sure.
brand awareness. And then I've got some fun ideas along those lines to have people playing the riff,
Mhm.
doing that for social, like telling more story about the riff because it really is like a whole thing. Like if you don't know music, in which I'm not claiming to know music. I'm just saying, like, if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like me, if you pick up the bottle, you're not gonna know that it's a music like that's a real song. You just, oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
But
just
like,
cool cool decoration, cool foil. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you can't see it in this one, but like if you look at the top right there, you've got the music note that symbolizes the beginning of a song. You have to have that to say this is the beginning of the song. So
Yeah.
we put that at the top right or top left to say this is the beginning of the riff. Now you can play it,
That's cool, man.
So everything is built to reality. So it's really cool.
Mhm. That's awesome. Um, so Chris, we've reached the point of the show for the Ask the Audience question. Um, this is where we sort of have this group of graphic designers and lovers of print, which most designers are, on our Instagram and on our social that just want to get involved and be part of that community. And I want to give you the opportunity to ask them a question.
Yeah.
So what would you like to ask them?
Well, I have my own like little fun little podcast I do really very rarely, and one
Yeah.
thing I wanted to start doing on it, it's called the Creative Punch Pod, is I ask people what their super sun is. And that's what I want to ask your fan base. What is their super sun? And when I say that, I mean I'm a big Spider-Man fan, humongous Spider-Man. I'm a big superhero guy. But one thing that I really like about Superman in itself, and I'm not a big Superman person, but I think this is really cool, is that he gets his power from the sun, right? Like that's what makes him super strong and all this kind of stuff. And so when he's like losing a battle or whatever, like the sun can help him out.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have that one thing that when we're struggling or just in general when we're happy, like we have that one thing that is our super sun, like that we can go to, that gives us strength, that gives us motivation, that gives us joy, that
Mhm.
makes us feel super.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious to what your audience and listener base and anyone listening to this, what is your super sun? What is the thing that you go to? And it can be anything. What is it that gives you strength?
Man, I love that question. I actually am not a big like comic book follower. Like Batman is kind of like the extent of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I didn't even know that Superman got his powers from the sun. Got refreshed or revitalized.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, I think that it's more like it's a lot of things. Like, he's Superman. He's from a alien planet, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like the sun like makes him like super powered.
yeah.
So that's cool.
I dig that. Man, Chris, you have reached the end of the print design podcast, man. This has been fantastic talking about this and diving into it. I actually want to try and figure out how to learn to play that riff. That is my goal for the next couple of weeks to try and figure that out. Um,
Dude, I'll send it to you, man. I'll send it to you in a flat version so you can see a little bit better.
Sweet, that would be awesome. Then I'll try and figure it out, try and remember reading sheet music and all of that kind of stuff. But man, this has been so great. Glad we made the time to do this. Thanks so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a complete honor, and I love what you're doing. I love your pod. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.